Part 8. Will and Imagination. Perhaps the most original part of Babbitt's work is his understanding of the relationship between will and imagination. To explain his theory, it is necessary to deal briefly with the will in general, ethical or unethical, as the energy which carries all human activity, whether practical, philosophical, or aesthetical. Many words, such as impulse, desire, interest, inclination, wish, passion, etc., denote the fundamental impelling power of will, without which human life would cease. Will is the generic term for that infinity and variety of impulse that orients the individual to particular tasks. Whatever the dominant disposition of a person at a particular time, it is a manifestation of will. The will is as active in contemplative moments, which are marked either by thinking or imagining, as in moments of practical action. The concentration of philosophy must be maintained by will, specifically by a desire to know. When the individual is engrossed in imagination, for instance, in a daydream or a poetic vision, the will is not enacted in practice, but inspires intuition. In one sense, will and imagination are the same. Desires forming in human consciousness are not blind urges. Even the simplest desires, for example, a wish to swallow a piece of food, expresses itself in imagination. Without becoming articulate in the imagery of possibility, for example, the anticipation of the pleasing texture and the taste of food, the desire is unaware of itself and powerless to move the person. The intuition of an act of eating is potentially very complex, for the imagined possibility necessarily contains some sense of the context and larger purpose to which it belongs. Each intuitive transfiguration of desire is to some extent a vision of life as a whole. The shape and direction of particular intuitions emanate from a general imaginative disposition in the individual. Different personalities are attracted to different possibilities. Babbitt explains that persons develop such imagination as is pleasing to their underlying orientation of character. Persons develop such imagination as is pleasing to their underlying orientation of character. Will ultimately decides the direction of activity, but Babbitt also emphasizes that the human will is dualistic, forever torn between higher and lower possibilities. Both poles of man's being express themselves in imagination. Transfigured into more or less poetic intuition, desires acquire the power that comes with concreteness and vividness. As institutions, they are not realized in practice, but as living visions of what could be, they stir the human self, inviting practical action consonant with themselves. Both the lower and the higher will express their purposes in magnetic imagery. The higher will is a potentiality of goodness that must be realized in continuous tension with an opposite quality of will. In this struggle, Babbitt argues the imagination, quote, holds the balance of power. He endorses Napoleon's view that imagination governs mankind. As one of three epigraphs to Rousseau and Romanticism, Babbitt selects the words of Pascal. L'imagination disposes the tout.